You're listening to Mountain Heartbeat with Joe and Rosa Hopkins, proclaiming the gospel through word and through song.
Thank you for joining us this week on Mountain Heartbeat. I'm Joe Hopkins. This week, Rosa interviews Pat Layton. She's a writer and speaker who recently finished her book, Surrendering the Secret. You can find it at surrenderingthesecret.com. And now, we'll go to the interview.
So I'd like to welcome author and speaker Pat Layton to Mountain Heartbeat today. Thank you so much, Pat, for joining us.
I am very happy to be here.
And now you have a story, and I'm not one to ever go into other people's story for our listeners. I think it's just the benefit that basically the person can tell their own story. So I will just allow you to give your testimony and just share with our audience what God has laid on your heart about your story.
All right. Well, the long and short of it is that I had an abortion when I was 23 years old. I had been a college student during the early years of the legalization of abortion and had been a very strong proponent of abortion, of a woman's right to choose, and had listened to, learned how to speak loudly the rhetoric that I heard on the college campus about a woman's right to choose. So when I found myself in an unplanned pregnancy, it seemed to me to be the logical thing to do. It made all the sense to me at the time. I was career-bound and completing my college degree and just had a lot on my plate, so I made a choice to have an abortion that was really very much of a head choice. And so I went in to have my abortion. It was supposed to be a quick and easy in-and-out procedure, but instead I had an allergic reaction to the anesthesia that they use and had to be put on a respirator in the middle of my abortion. So my abortion secret was not a secret immediately. I had to be admitted to the hospital. I had to have the abortion over again a few days later. So it became a very complicated, dark, scary, confusing point in my life since I had been so convinced it was the right thing to do. So I basically spent the next 7 years doing everything that I would later learn is symptomatic of post-abortion trauma. So I began to make all kinds of bad choices, basically hate myself, do everything that I could short of a successful suicide to just destroy my life. I just felt so guilty and ashamed for having had my abortion. I began to have nightmares, and I married my child's father, and our marriage was in the pits, neither of us really knowing why. So without knowing it, we began to express and live out the trauma of a past abortion. And 7 years later, I surrendered my heart to the Lord, and He turned my whole life around and our life around. My husband and I both became Christians within 6 months of each other. And so God got us. Mm-hmm. He got our life, He got our heart, He got our testimony. And so from there, we started a ministry very soon after that, really just a couple of years, because we went through our own healing process, our biblically based healing process for our past abortion, and God called us basically through us into ministry very soon after becoming Christians. And we've spent the past 25 years living out that ministry of helping others find healing from abortion.
Oh, wow. And as far as what you hear basically in the media, or what you hear as far as common knowledge about abortion trauma isn't something that you really hear about, because there's so much that basically says it's just a clump of tissue, it's a woman's choice. As you were saying, it's the logical thing to do, especially if you're career oriented. What things do you think that basically a person would experience as a part of that abortion trauma, and perhaps not even realize that it is attached to that?
Well, I think the statement you've made is so relevant today, because I think especially in this time we're discovering, not to media bash, but we're discovering a lot about how we're led as human beings, as men and women, that we're led by the media and by rhetoric that we hear. And so I think that when women, especially, and I'm speaking on behalf of women today, this does, of course, cross both boundaries of men and women, but when women are very convinced that abortion is the right thing to do, the symptoms and the heartbreak get so lost and covered up, first of all, in what they think they're supposed to feel. I mean, it took me 7 years of abortion trauma before I really ever identified what was wrong with me. You know, how my heart was broken by the abortion. I had nightmares. I was overusing drugs and alcohol. I was acting out in terms of just putting my whole life, world, thought, mind into my career and being successful, because that was part of my reason for having an abortion, was because I was career bound. And so I felt like I had to do that. I mean, that was the reason I, for lack of a better word, had killed my baby. In my mind, that's what I was thinking. You know, this is why I made this choice, so I have to be successful. And so there's so many symptoms. Many of the symptoms of a past abortion are the same as found in any post-traumatic stress syndrome, accidents, seeing a horrible crime or an accident, or, military, people who served in the military. So it's all those typical symptoms of anxiety, of sleeplessness, of weight gain, of alcohol abuse, of nightmares, of self-hate, no self-esteem, hate of the other sex that's involved in this issue. So I was a book description of post-traumatic syndrome, and pretty much exhibited most all of those symptoms at some time or another.
Wow.
So when I became a Christian and began to seek Christian counseling through this kind of therapy and talking about my past and choices I had made, the abortion came up, and the heartbreak and the gut-wrenching breakdown that I had when I finally allowed myself to feelings. So I think listeners and who have had a past abortion and maybe haven't identified the heartbreak of abortion, if you think about it, and we have online on our website, there's a little questionnaire, but if you really are able to think about those things in light of your choice for an abortion, most often they will discover hidden heartbreak that has just really been covered up for many, many years.
And so if somebody out there is listening and they recognize that they, in fact, are suffering from post-abortive trauma, what sort of things did God bring into your life to help bring about healing, and what sort of things and resources are there available for women that are going through that currently?
Well, for me, I brought a biblical counselor into my life very soon after I became a Christian, just through a series of connections that I made and through such a radical life change that I made. And so I sought out a Christian counselor who began to try to help me heal my marriage. And in that healing process, we uncovered my abortion trauma. So it was the system that she used, and with her help, that I created a post-abortion recovery program called Surrendering the Secret. And that Bible study was published by Lifeway about 7 years ago, and has now ministered to thousands upon thousands of women and men across the nation. So resources, we have a website, surrenderingthesecret.com, and the material, as I said, was published by Lifeway, Surrendering the Secret, easy to find on the internet. And there are multiple other resources. Mine was written, essentially it was written 25 years ago when I walked through this with that counselor. But many other products have been written along the way, along the journey. So a listener could Google just post-abortion trauma or post-abortion loss, pain and loss from abortion, any number of those things, and come up with multiple different reasons.
That's all the time we have for this week on Mountain Heartbeat. We'd certainly enjoy it if you joined us next week, same channel, same time, where Rosa will finish her interview with Pat Layton. You can find Rosa's blog on lifeinsidethehouseontherock.com, and you can find this as well as other fine episodes on soundcloud.com/Rosa Hopkins or on youtube.com/Joe and Rosa Hopkins. Now we have a special treat. Here's a friend of ours, Ginny McJunkin, playing A Ramshackle Shack.
I love to walk down an old country dirt road, feel the warmth of the sun on my face as I go, under the beauty of a sky bright and fair. I feel at peace with God and talk with Him there. In glory, I know there are streets made of gold, but all I need, Lord, is an old dirt road, a ramshackle shack and a cool mountain spring. This is heaven to me. I don't need fancy things. Give me a little place where tall trees stand, and I'll get home to that beautiful land. Let me drink of the water from the purest spring. There's angels all about me, praise you and sing. In glory, I know there are streets made of gold, but all I need, Lord, is an old dirt road, a ramshackle shack and a cool mountain spring. This is heaven to me. I don't need fancy things. Place pretty flowers around my porch that will never wither or die anymore. Let me hear the babbling of a little brook beside my heavenly home, sitting back in a nook. In glory, I know there are streets made of gold, but all I need, Lord, is an old dirt road, a ramshackle shack and a cool mountain spring. This is heaven to me. I don't need fancy things. A ramshackle shack and a cool mountain spring. This is heaven